Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to Afternoon Tea. So let me just get to my YouTube channel so I can see your guys' comments. But meanwhile, let me know if you can hear me alright, if you can see me alright. Sometimes when I go for a while of not doing these live streams, the settings can get all changed around and stuff. Wow, YouTube really changed its app. How in the world do I get to my channel? Let's see. Surely I have... Here we go. Live. Is this the one that's happening right now? No. That's strange. Okay. Home. So they changed the app, and now I can't figure out how to watch my own video. Because I can't see your guys' comments unless I watch my own video, because my computer's on the other side of the room. Come on. Come on. It's 12 days ago. What's... videos? No. Wow, I cannot watch my own stuff. Alex, the historian. Go to that. Come on. Okay, there we go. Found it. Jeez. They made that really difficult. Okay. And why is the chat not showing up? There we go. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Oh my gosh, that was frustrating. Okay, so we got hello, we got Poseidon of the Seas, we got Kevin, Mike, Train Chaser Andy, hello, Transportation Fan, Moonzer, we got Ken, let's see, who else? We got Ella, hello Ella, Chris, Jeffrey, the geek of literally everything, Skidoo, hello Skidoo, oh my gosh, that's a surprise, hello Steve from Expedition Steve, let's see, and hello Kevin, wow, that's so cool. Okay, I'm glad I got everybody here. So everybody says they can hear me, they can see me, that's good. Okay, so we can begin. So there's been some good news happening for the Queen Mary. I'll do this while I start preparing the tea. So for one thing, you know, I've been watching the news and stuff recently because I have to. That's what I do. I gather information so that way every couple of months I put out a update video about the Queen Mary, and there's been some really neat stuff. You know, such as the fact that they are going to announce a way for people to be able to see the swimming pool room in a very limited way, but they will be announcing a way to see it. So that's a really cool thing. You know, that's something that, I mean, there was literally a person on my channel who was like, oh, I've been talking to the management and they said that they are never opening it up. And I'm like, that's not what I'm hearing from management. Like, I don't know where you're hearing that, but that's not it. But, you know, another thing that's going to be happening is the return of the Sunday brunch buffet. Let me empty out half of each of these. So the Sunday brunch buffet was really, really popular because it's, I heard it, well, I've never been there, but it's super delicious, I heard. And it's, it's like all you can eat, I hear. But anyway, that's going to be returning December 3rd is what has been announced so far. So that's an official announcement. They said December 3rd. And then from then on, it'll continue. Which is a huge, you know, thing, because even before the ship closed for the pandemic, they had stopped doing the Sunday brunches for a while, even though they were popular. And that was because of the previous operator of the Queen Mary just, I don't know, they made a lot of really strange business decisions. And I really can't explain it. I have no idea what possessed them to make such strange business decisions, but they did. You know, there's talk about, you know, the future of the lifeboats, which sounds really positive, because I know a lot of you folks have been asking, what's going to happen to Queen Mary's lifeboats? Is she ever going to get, you know, are the davits ever going to have lifeboats on them again, and that kind of thing? And from what I hear, you know, that specifically from management and people on the Queen Mary, is that the 3 original lifeboats that are on the property, the 2 that are still on the ship and the 1 that's on the wharf, will get restored, like full restoration. So that way people can examine them and see what they'll look like, as well as the fact that the ones on the ship, at least, probably all 3, but the ones on the ship will have like some kind of clear dome over them to protect them from the weather, but still allow people to look inside and see what the lifeboats looked like on the inside. So they're gonna have some kind of clear dome. Maybe it's plexi. I hope it's not plexiglass, because plexiglass it just looks awful in the weather, because the weather like destroys it. But some kind of dome. Maybe it's some kind of clear fiberglass. I have no idea. But they're going to put some kind of dome over it to allow people to see inside, but it'll be protected by weather. And they will be fully restored to how they looked, you know, in the 1930s or so, I hear. You know, and then as for the rest of the davits, each one has to be specifically assessed by an engineer to determine how much weight it can hold, because they are deteriorated. They will need repairs of some kind to keep them in good enough condition that they're safe to stand underneath. But once they determine how much weight can be held by each one, they will consider making lightweight replicas of the lifeboats and then putting the replicas up on the davits. So that way the ship has full, at least it looks like it's full of lifeboats, even though they're all replicas. And they're not going to be like accurate replicas, they're going to be lightweight replicas, which means that they're probably not going to have any interiors to them, probably just a simple frame, like a steel frame or something. So it's going to be like, you know, some really, really cool stuff. But they did admit, though, that that the lifeboats themselves and the restoration of the davits, that's going to come later, because they do actually have some really more pressing projects that have to be done first. You know, first and foremost, before the davits can even be done, and with lifeboats up on them, they have to restore the promenade side shell, which has been under so much damage because of the pressure of holding up the lifeboats above, because the davits are so degraded on the promenade level that the weight has transferred onto the side shell, which was not designed to support all the weight. It was only designed to support like 20% of the weight or something like that. And so the side shell needs to be completely restored somehow. They're probably going to have to rip out the entire side shell and reinstall it, which is a task that is unbelievably difficult, because each window on the side shell is unique to its location. It's not like the windows on a house, which are often quite similar to each other, and you could literally like swap them out for a store-bought version. The windows on Queen Mary are all designed to fit within a ship that has shear, and that kind of complicates things. So everything must be done almost as if it was done in the 1930s, which is like by cutting out the windows individually instead of having them manufactured that way. So it's going to be very difficult, but they do have a lot of stuff ahead. So let me see. Oh, Chris, I'm so sorry to hear about your cat. Oh my gosh. I know what it's like to lose a favorite pet, and it's just, oh, it's so sad. But, yeah, my condolences to you. Moonzer says, did you know RMS Queen Elizabeth had an arcade? There was a picture in Ringo Verisco's book. I had no idea. Jeffrey says, just an email from Queen Mary today. Says they're doing ghost hunting and seances now. Indeed, they are. They have a new... See, you can already tell I don't like it. They have a new feature, a new offering, I should say, on the ship where you pay, like, I think it's $125, and you go to various locations on the ship, just a few, and they're not even, like, secret locations. They're locations that everybody can go to already. And you just do, like, little seances there. So I think the first one is, like, the isolation wards. Then there is the rope storage at the bow of the ship, which, you know, that's available on other tours, like the Steam and Steel tour. Then there is the pool room, which you don't even do a seance there. You just walk into a specific area in the pool room. You're cramped into this tiny little area because they don't let you wander around the pool room. And then you just, like, they kind of, like, tell you a few ghost stories of there. And then they do somewhere else, and then they go to this recently repainted room, which used to be part of the third-class restaurant. I was getting really excited because I saw them doing restoration work of that room, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to bring back the third-class restaurant, even if it's just a portion of it. I thought they're going to restore it to that. No, they turned it into a seance room. So I was pretty upset about that because there's plenty of room on the ship to create a seance room. You don't need to use a historic part of the ship to create a seance room. So I was pretty upset about that. So let me actually get this tea started because otherwise I'll never do it. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, you got people that are just like, you know, bring back the third class restaurant. You know, people want to see how it looked, and here they have this opportunity because there's this area that still looks original, but was just closed off behind doors. And then instead of let me time this. So 116. This in there. That brew. So 121. Yeah, I like to brew it for like 5 minutes. So, you know, instead of like finding an empty area of the ship that is already gutted, that, you know, probably wouldn't amount to much anyway, instead of doing that, they just used an area that already looked pretty close to how it used to in the 1930s and then turned it into a seance room. Granted, all they did was paint the plaster walls, which were not original. They were added in years after the ship arrived in Long Beach. And they didn't touch the wood paneled walls, just the plaster walls. But still, it's like, why use that as a seance room? Why? Anyway, I don't want to get into a tangent, but yeah, so that's pretty upsetting. But I did end up emailing the general manager of the Queen Mary, Steve Kaloka, because, as you guys know, I'm full of ideas on how to, you know, how to make the ship more profitable, how to do it in a way that honors the history of the ship, but still will interest younger audiences and new visitors. And right now, what they don't want to hear is all these expensive ideas. They don't want to hear me, some random guy, coming in and saying, oh, you know, rebuild the boiler rooms. Like, that would be an awesome project, but we're talking, that's like, you know, probably like $5 to $10 million worth of work. They don't want to hear that from me. So I thought, what are some ideas that are so low cost, they're almost free to do? And so I came up with a list of 6 things. 1 or 2 of them I think actually cost some money, but not a lot of money. But the other 4 ideas were like free, things that they could do for free that would draw in new visitors. And so I came up with 6 things, and I explained it very thoroughly and why each of those 6 things should be done. And so, yeah, and I explained all that to him. I explained, my background. There is like gunk in this water. They're like little black pebbles. What in the world? And they're all like floating to the top of my teacup. Oh, good Lord. And how did that get there? Oh, you know what I think it is? It's the tea. Okay, there we go. It's the tea. I must have like been hovering the little tea infuser over the teacup, and like the tea just dropped down into the teacup. Okay. I was like, what is with these black pebbles? I'm like, what is going on, and why are they floating? Anyway, okay, it's tea. Anyway, what was I saying? So yeah, I sent him that email, and I'm hoping, there will be at least an acknowledgement that he received the email. Maybe he'll just be like, thank you so much for the email, I'll review it. That's all I want. And the hope is that maybe they'll think some of the ideas are really, really good and then try to implement them. But yeah. That's kind of my hope. Because right now they don't have a lot of money to work with. So suggesting big ideas is not going to work with them. They don't have that much money to work with. They're working on a very tight budget that must be spread out all over the ship. So having, 6 low-cost / free ideas that, they can implement and it won't cost them much more money, and yet it'll bring in more people, I think is a good idea. So let's see. It's 1:21, so it's time for the tea. Okay. And just give that a stir. Okay. That's that. I can dump this out. Yeah, there we go. Hello, Gishmake. Hello, Manny. King of Battleship says, so what would need to happen if they need to replace the frames on the Queen Mary? That depends. If they need to replace one frame on the Queen Mary, there would be a very, very invasive project of replacing the frame one piece at a time. They would open up the bulkheads, or even probably the outer steel shell. That's probably the best way to do it. Open up the outer steel shell by removing steel plates, or cutting into them. They could do that, cutting into them. And then slowly cut out the frame that they need to replace piece by piece, and then install a new frame piece by piece. They might choose to do it with the riveting technique, since they are required by certain standards to maintain the historic integrity of the ship. They may have to do it with rivets. That's how they would replace a frame, or a couple of frames. But if they needed to replace a certain amount of frames, a substantial amount, it may just be easier to scrap the ship. So, because if you have to remove too many frames, it would be so invasive to the ship that it would actually damage the ship permanently. So, yeah, if there was too many frames that needed to be replaced, that would probably have to be weighed against actually just scrapping the ship and calling it quits. But if it was a single frame, that's probably how they would do it. Just replace piece by piece. Because every piece of steel on the Queen Mary is replaceable. You know, even if the pieces were welded together, you know, a modern company would just use a torch and cut them off and then install a new piece and weld that in. With the Queen Mary, it's all done with rivets. You could cut the rivets off, remove the piece of steel, replace it with another piece of steel, rivet that in. That's how you replace stuff on Queen Mary. And people don't realize that. So some people are like, oh, look how rusted and terrible the ship is. Just scrap her. It's easier. It's like, no, actually, you can replace parts on the Queen Mary. They're not permanently there for all eternity. Like, they can be removed. I mean, the ship rammed a British cruiser during World War II, which crumpled the bow of the Queen Mary. And what they ended up doing was just removing those plates, installing a brand new bow and bow stem, and then riveting all that in. And today you look at it and you could never even tell that the ship once rammed a British cruiser. You can't tell by looking at it. So some people forget that parts on ships, especially parts that are hard to see, are replaceable. So yeah, that's how they would do it. King of Battleships says, why did Cunard not build a ship to recapture the Blue Riband after the Queen Mary lost it to SS United States? That's because the Blue Riband does not take precedence over business matters. Business matters are more important. So having two ships that can cross the Atlantic and carry the most amount of passengers possible, and earn as much money possible, much profit possible, that's what matters most. And if they need to build a new ship for business reasons, then they might decide to make that ship fast enough to capture the Riband, so that way they could claim some kind of supremacy. But the thing is that building a ship that can win the Blue Riband costs a lot of money, because it's the same reason why the Queen Elizabeth could not have captured the Blue Riband. When you push Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth really hard, Queen Mary has the capacity to produce a lot more steam volume than Queen Elizabeth could. Queen Elizabeth had just enough steam volume capacity, I don't know the right words for it, to run herself at her full speed. You know what I'm saying? But Queen Mary could push past that because she had a lot more capacity to create a larger volume of steam, so she wouldn't run out of steam when reaching her highest, fastest speeds. So, yeah. And the thing is that when you compare Queen Mary to Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mary was more expensive to run because she had all that machinery. That was more machinery to take care of, more machinery to fuel up, more machinery to operate. But Queen Elizabeth had fewer pieces of machinery. She was more efficient to run in that way, and she cost less. So, business-wise, you know, there was no reason to build another ship. The other thing, too, is that another thing Cunard knew is that the Blue Riband is something that is easily lost. You know, you spend millions upon millions upon millions of dollars building a new ship to capture the Blue Riband, and then it holds it for, like, sometimes only a few months until some other ship is launched and put into service, and then that ship captures the Riband. So if you're building just to capture the blue Riband, then you're doing your business wrong, you know. So that's why they didn't do it. And the QE2 was not built fast enough to capture the Riband, because by the late 60s, the blue Riband didn't matter anymore. By the late 60s, it was like, you know, nobody was building ships to capture the Riband. So yeah, it just didn't matter anymore. Let me go ahead and stir this. Train Chaser says, Alex, why did Cunard paint the funnels even though it faded so much in the sea weather? Because if you want to be a luxury ship, you can't let stuff fall into disrepair or look ugly. You know, it's the same reason why, you know, Disney often, you know, does a lot of restorations in their park every single year, is because, you know, it looks bad when you have this company that charges a lot of money for something and they claim to be the best, and they might allow someone to see something fall into disrepair or turn ugly. So the funnels on the Queen Mary, you know, they had to keep repainting them. You know, and it wasn't just the funnels, it was the whole ship. You know, after each voyage, the ship received a touch-up. Now, I'm going to elaborate on what a touch-up means, because some people think that means that they repaint the whole ship, and that's not what a touch-up is. A touch-up is if there's a streak of rust, they will paint that streak of rust with the proper paint, so that way the rust, you know, is covered. They might even clean that rust off and then repaint it. But quite often they just chose to layer the paint on the ship. But that's what they did. After each voyage, the ships, Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, and other Cunard ships as well, I mean, it wasn't just the two queens, received touch-ups of paint. So wherever the paint was chipping off or rubbed off or rusted, that area was repainted to prevent it from getting worse. And that is a good technique for keeping a ship in top shape for a long time. Good example is Queen Mary still around, so obviously what they did in the service years, you know, had worked. So yeah, that's why they do it. And then the ship received its full repaint about once or sometimes twice a year. So that meant going into dry dock and then having the whole ship from stem to stern repainted. And they would have to do that in dry dock because it took a lot of effort. So yeah. Chris says, hey Alex, they should really stop with the ghost crap stuff for the Queen Mary. I agree. I don't like that they do all that ghost stuff. You know, I mean, I have no problem with someone who's like, hey, I'm going to book a room on the Queen Mary so I can do a seance in my hotel room. Okay, fine. But I don't like that they push so heavily on the marketing and offerings of the ghost stuff on Queen Mary. Because the thing is in my email, I told the general manager, Steve, I told him, you know, I can't begin to describe how many people have commented on my channel over the past 3 years that they would never step foot on the Queen Mary because they're too afraid, or maybe their kids are too afraid because the ship is haunted. I told him, I said, that is alarming to anyone that operates a business. If you own a business and someone tells you that they're too afraid to step foot in your business and, you know, pay for services or products, that's alarming, because the thing is that's, you need money for your business to survive. So while there are a lot of ghost hunters and stuff who are willing to book rooms on the ship, willing to take those tours, willing to do all that stuff, there's a lot more people out there who are not ghost hunters, who are not ghost enthusiasts, who could generate more money for your business. It's like I often say, you know, it's one thing if you're like the Winchester Mystery House, which touts and fully, you know, markets how haunted it is. It's a house. You know, the most it needs every day is maybe some repaint. You know, there might be some roof leaks that need to be fixed. It's, you know, and then you pay your staff. Right? That's it. It's a house. It's not, no one stays there. No one sleeps there. You don't need to pay housekeepers. You don't need to pay for bed linens, all that kind of stuff. No one needs to buy breakfast there. It's a house, right? So marketing it as a haunted house is actually good for business because you will receive enough people every day to come and see it to cover all your costs. But Queen Mary is not just a ship. She is also a museum and a hotel and, you know, food and dining, you know, location. She's got a lot of really expensive operations happening within her hull. You know, she's got all that housekeeping to do because she's a hotel, all the refurbishments that need to be kept up. You know, if there's a leak on the Queen Mary from rainwater or whatever, it can affect lots of areas of the ship, not just located directly at the source of the leak. You know, so, you know, there's a lot of expense that goes into the Queen Mary. The thing is that you might be able to support a haunted house off of marketing it as haunted, but you can't support a ship with literally 1 million square feet of walkable space that needs to be cared for and maintained constantly. 1 million square feet, for those that don't know, is like a skyscraper. A skyscraper. You cannot, I mean, imagine. And the Queen Mary is, if you stood the Queen Mary from her stern upwards with her bow at the top like a skyscraper, she would be somewhat equal to the what do you call it? To the Chrysler Building in New York. So imagine if the Chrysler Building, all of its marketing was done that it was a haunted skyscraper. It probably wouldn't do too well as a business, because there wouldn't be enough people visiting all the time to make it profitable. So that's my problem with the whole ghost aspect of the Queen Mary. And by marketing it as haunted, you start to alienate the people who might have come with their family and spent a whole bunch of money, but they won't come because they're either too afraid to go, or their children or other family members are too afraid to go. So you end up alienating a lot more of your demographic than just a certain niche amount. So that's why I warned him about it. I told him, I said, in my email, I said, I know I might be overstepping by telling you this, but I truly believe that it is not a good idea. And so I explained why. But yeah, they'll probably still keep marketing it as haunted because, frankly, after 30 years, they're used to doing it that way. It's all they know. It makes money. So why quit something that they know makes money? So they're probably not going to do it. They're probably going to keep, you know, the ghost aspect. Let's see. Transportation Fan says, hey Alex, if you were able to run a tourist railroad, what are the 3 steam engines you would run? I would run a Forney, a 440 American type, and a Mogul. So yeah. Hello, Swifty. How's it going? Let's see. Jamie says, Alex, regarding seance, they're going to cruise the ship? You mean curse? Yeah, I think you mean curse the ship? Yeah, I think, you know, that's a possibility. You know, seances are not exactly safe. But he is Aidan Sinclair, the illusionist. So I don't think it's a real seance, it's all illusions. Oh, that tastes so good. I end up talking so much that I don't even drink my tea. The other thing I have here is Walker's shortbreads. So these have been sitting for so long, I've got to eat them. I've only eaten like a few of them so far. And I didn't even have breakfast, so I'm pretty hungry. Oh, come on. I'll deal with that later. It's like, what? Anyway, yeah, this is one of my new favorite tins. It's Queen Elizabeth II. It's a commemorative tin by Walker's. So, pretty cool. Okay, so Mike Ryan says, where do you get the diffusers from? Oh, the tea diffusers. So slide this over so you guys can see it. It's got a little chain too. I got it off Amazon, actually. I went through a bunch of different tea diffusers to look at, like, okay, what do I think will work really well? And I saw these, and I saw their capacity, and I thought, these are the ones. So I got the diffusers off Amazon. I have the little demi-tasse spoons I got off Amazon, but everything else you see here besides the tea diffuser and the spoons is original Queen Mary china. Yes, I remember you, Emma. Chilling in the Frozen North says, would the Queen Mary have to be dry docked if a frame needs to be replaced? If they're going to replace it from the outside... Yeah, you know what? Actually, yeah. No matter what, they would have to dry dock the ship to replace the frame. But let me just, like, remind everybody, there's no frames on the ship that need replacing. They're all in really good shape. You know, they did several surveys, ultrasounds. There's no, like, issues with the steel on the Queen Mary. It's actually in really good shape. That's one of the weird, you might even say, like, borderline paranormal things about the Queen Mary is how good of shape she is for her age. It's kind of strange because there's a lot of ships that are older than her or younger than her who are in much worse shape. So, yeah. L. Cruz says, hello, Alex. You have a great channel. I love your Disney info, too. When is a good time to stay at the Queen Mary? You know, I've never stayed at the Queen Mary before. I've visited the Queen Mary for a single day various times of the year. But I would think that... see, there's trade-offs. Like, I would say Christmas, right? Because Christmas is beautiful. There's decorations everywhere. Everything looks nice. But then for the rest of your life, you have nothing but photos of Queen Mary covered in Christmas decorations. I mean, they usually, like, the forward mast on the ship, they usually cover that in lights so it looks like a giant Christmas tree. But during the daytime, when you try to take pictures of the bow, it ruins the pictures because there's black electrical cords everywhere, all hanging from the mast. So, you know, if you try to take a picture of the main hull, you're going to have garlands everywhere that are covering the beauty. So, it's beautiful during Christmas, but at the same time, you're going to be stuck forever with photos of it during Christmas. So, you know. But if you know that you're going to be there multiple times per year, not just Christmas, then yeah, definitely Christmas is a great time to go because it's probably one of the most popular times a year. If you're really into scary, spooky, haunted stuff, then Halloween is probably the time to go because they have a lot of Halloween offerings. Otherwise, I would say that if you're just looking just to see the Queen Mary, you don't care about holidays, I would say January or February, honestly, because the weather is still good in Southern California. Like, summer is just hot. Like, summer and fall are hot. It's unbelievable. And the Queen Mary is no better because even though she does have air conditioning, not every area of the ship is air conditioned. So there are hot patches on the ship. But if you're looking just to see the Queen Mary and for there to be good enough weather that, you know, it's still, you can walk around comfortably outside, I would say January or February. Maybe March, but springtime does start to warm up in Southern California. So yeah, I would say January or February. Liners of our times, or Ken, I should say. Alex, have you been working on your train lately? No, I have not. I've wanted to because I've been wanting to get my other channel started with the train stuff, but I haven't had time. I've been literally so busy with just this channel. And there's been multiple times in the past where I've tried to start up a second channel, but I can never do it because I don't have the time. So, yeah. I haven't been working on the train layout recently. El Cruz says, what are you drinking? I have Earl Grey tea here. That's what I'm drinking. Thank you, Candace. I'm doing wonderful. Reeve Cordy says, just found your channel. Been enjoying it. Awesome. Thanks. Carter Asher says, Alex, did you know that today is the anniversary of Olympics launch? No, I did not. That's pretty cool. Let's see. I'm reading everybody's comments, but I don't read them all out loud because otherwise we'd be here forever. Geshmak says, not only are people afraid of the ghosts on the Queen Mary, but people also resent the hordes of ghost hunters who run around in the halls of the Queen Mary day and night, yelling, etc. Yes, some of you may not have experienced that, but I have seen it. There are ghost hunters who go around day and night. They're either, you know, just there for fun, or sometimes they're there to film a YouTube video. They, you know, if you're lucky, they're somewhat respectable people who walk around and try to capture evidence of ghosts, but nevertheless, they're there in the middle of the night, talking to spirits, making noise. All the rooms on the Queen Mary, the staterooms, are not very well soundproofed because they were designed because the ship, when it was in service, all the machinery on the ship made so much noise that it created kind of like a white noise in every single room. So it didn't matter if you soundproofed the room because the sound of the engines and everything would just reverberate up through the rooms. So now that the ship is a hotel and the engines and machinery are completely silent or non-existent, now you can just hear what happens in the next room over with hardly any kind of soundproofing. So for that reason, when you have these ghost hunters walking around the hallways at night, talking to ghosts like, can you please make a sound or something, you know, it wakes people up in the middle of the night. There's been a lot of complaints, you know, from hotel guests who go up to the front desk and they're like, there are people just walking around, just talking to ghosts in the middle of the night, waking everybody up, you know. So if you're lucky, that's the respectable people. Then you have the ones that are making YouTube videos who are running around and screaming, I just saw something, you know, and, you know, making their YouTube videos and whatever, and it's awful, you know. I've seen some YouTubers who have broken in to areas of the ship that are blocked off for people to go, there's a good reason why, because there's a lot, there's a lot of artifacts on the Queen Mary that are sometimes just sitting around the corner behind a door that, blocks regular visitors from going in. Artifacts, like actual stuff. Like, I've seen artifacts like original barbershop chairs from the first class barbershop, which no longer exists, but the chairs are still there, or actually in storage, But nevertheless, like, there are people who break into parts of the ship to look around, and then they see stuff like that just lying around, and they have no idea what it is. They could vandalize it thinking that it's some useless chair that nobody wants anymore. So if they wanted to, they could vandalize it, and no one could stop them because they're just walking around the ship. Like, the ship's always been like that. So I'm always against people just going around the ship and investigating it for themselves. I know there's a lot of people who would say, oh, but I've done it and I've been really respectful. And I'm like, that's great, but if people see you doing it, they're going to want to do it too. So that's why I've always been against it. So, even if I was at the Queen Mary and I was faced with the ability to go somewhere where I wasn't supposed to go, I wouldn't do it. But if there's an area that is normally a public space, like, for instance, there was the first class smoking room, it technically was not open for visitors a certain day, but the door was not locked. So I opened the door, walked into the first class smoking room, and it's, like I said, it's normally a public space, so it's not like it's behind the scenes. I've done that, but I don't think I would ever choose to just, like, walk into abandoned sections of the ship where I wasn't supposed to be. That would just not be right in my book. But yeah. Moonzer says, hey, Alex, they should do all the ghost stuff in the dome next to Queen Mary. Well, the dome is occupied right now by the Carnival Cruise Terminal. So where you check in and, give them all your luggage and all that stuff, that's inside the dome. So they can't put anything in there because there's already something in there. King of Battleship says, the fact that Queen Mary is designated as a building makes absolutely no sense because she doesn't even look like a building. She looks like a ship because she is a ship. So let me explain why the Queen Mary is designated as a building. In 1967, when the Queen Mary came to Long Beach and finally retired from service officially, there were changes about to be made to maritime laws. Now, don't ask me what group, I don't know. All I know is what I'm about to tell you, and this I feel very confident that I know. There were maritime laws and regulations that were about to be changed, updated I should say, to make ships safer, more modern, that kind of thing. And those updates, if they were applied to the Queen Mary, would actually require the Queen Mary to have some major renovations done that would have completely changed the ship. We're talking having asbestos removed, we're talking having the davits altered, we're talking like some major invasive work done to the ship. And if she had remained as designated as a ship even to this day, she would still be under those maritime laws. Those are the same maritime laws that prevent a ship being made too much of wood, a ship just having shear, having all kinds of stuff. Like, there would have been a lot of changes that would have had to be made to the Queen Mary. I know some of you would be like, oh, they grandfather that in. Look, I can't explain why because I don't know all that stuff. But what I can tell you is, no, certain things on the Queen Mary would not have been grandfathered in. they would have forcefully had to change it. So, Long Beach knew this when they bought the Queen Mary. And to preserve whatever historical aspect of the Queen Mary they could, because I know they ruined a lot of stuff and they ripped a lot of things out at the time, but there was a certain amount of the ship that they wanted to keep original. They knew that the ship could no longer be designated as a ship, or else she would have to change with the times over the years, and it would not have been pretty. So what they ended up doing was going to the Coast Guard and saying, what can we do? The Coast Guard said, we can designate her as a floating building, and that way she's only required to follow the safety regulations of a building. And so buildings, they're a lot more lenient, especially if a building is very old. They're very, very lenient. They just require a few things to make a building safe over the course of the years. But maritime laws change constantly. The codes change constantly with maritime stuff. So the Coast Guard designated the Queen Mary as a building. So she is technically no longer considered a ship in terms of paperwork, how she's designated in the city. Anyway, by designating her as a building, she's been able to retain a lot of her original features, a lot of her original look, a lot of her original safety equipment and stuff like that. So it's helped to preserve the Queen Mary. And so, yeah, that's a big reason, not all the reason, but a big reason why she could never return to passenger service, because she's already been designated as a building, and switching her back over would require basically demolishing her and rebuilding her from the keel up. So yeah, it just wouldn't happen. But yeah, that is why she's designated as a building. So it's a good thing that she's designated as a building. There's a lot of ships. Here's a good example. The SS United States. There's a reason why the SS United States is completely gutted on the inside. Maritime laws. They did not allow asbestos on ships after a certain year. So the entire ship had to be gutted in order to maintain the maritime law. SS United States was never designated as a building the way Queen Mary was. So Queen Mary would have met the same fate as the SS United States if she was not designated as a building. So that is the very reason. That's the very reason. Alright, so let's see here. Sunset. No, I don't have the Lego Titanic. I don't really have Lego anything. I just not into Legos. El Cruz says, what is the food like on the ship? And what is a nice spot on the ship to appreciate the craftsmanship? So the food on the ship is really good. It's all Californian American food. There's not really anything of any kind of ethnic-y thing going on. I think the only thing that isn't American that they serve in one of the restaurants is probably the fish and chips. That's obviously British. But other than that, the food is really good. I ate there once before the pandemic. I loved it. I had chicken and waffles for breakfast. And some people might go, oh, that's just chicken. No. If you make chicken wrong, you can tell. The chicken has to be good. And the chicken was very good. So, yeah, I had chicken and waffles, really good. My friend had a soup. He loved it. Another friend of mine, I think, had a salad, and he loved that, too. And then the current food offerings look amazing. I've seen some of the photographs. They got, for breakfast, they got things like Eggs Benedict, but done a certain way. Stuff like that. I don't know. I can't describe everything because I haven't seen everything yet, but from what I have seen, it looks absolutely delicious. And as a former chef myself, I can say that, I definitely approve of how the food looks. It looks like it would taste very good. Nothing looks amiss about it. So, yeah, I'm excited whenever I do get to go back to the Queen Mary to eat there. But, like I said, there's nothing of any kind of ethnic-y. So you're not going to find anything that is outside the American or British taste on the ship, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but being that Southern California is full of all kinds of diverse cultures, there's nothing there on the ship for people of various cultures to enjoy, except for just, you know, American or British food. So, yeah, that's something they might want to think about in the future. There should be some place on there, on the ship, that does something. Ken says, has Queen Mary ever had issues with termites? I've never heard of an issue on the Queen Mary with termites. Walking around the ship, I've never seen any signs of termite damage. So, the reason why I don't think it's possible is because, first of all, she's a ship. You know, she's surrounded by water. But the other thing, too, is that the land next to the Queen Mary is all concreted over. There's no, like... Yeah, it's also man-made land, too. So underneath the top layer is all sand. So I don't think it's actually very conducive for termite habitats. So I think where she is actually very good, because there's no way termites can really get on the ship. So yeah, I've never heard of termite issues on the Queen Mary. Nathan says, "Hi Alex, what is one disused space on the Queen Mary that you believe could easily be restored and repurposed for use by hotel guests and visitors?" So the key word here in your question is easily. So there are a few places that I think could be easily restored. However, its use among hotel guests, people wouldn't want to use it. So for instance, one of the easiest places that they could restore is the second class library. The second class library is on main deck, and it still has all its original wood paneling, its original cabinets, all that kind of stuff. The only thing that's really missing is the center table that used to be in there, but they probably have that in storage somewhere. I'm almost certain they do. So they could actually just restore that space and turn it back into a library. But the thing is that hotel guests wouldn't use it. I mean, no offense to the hotel guests, but none of them look like the kind of people who would enjoy reading in the library when there's a lot more that could be done. No offense to the hotel guests, but it just seems like they're the kind of people that would rather see the engine room than to sit in the library and read a book. So, yeah, I don't think that would be a space that the hotel guests would enjoy. But that's like the easiest thing that could be restored. You know, just what comes up to the top of my head is something that would be very difficult to restore. So, I think hotel guests really, really want a pool on the Queen Mary. I think they would really enjoy that. And no, I don't think the first class pool is a place that they should use as a pool. I mean, I know a lot, you know, my friends would probably disagree. Steve, who's in the chat right now, would probably disagree with me. He's told me himself that he thinks that the first class pool could be reused as a swimming pool for hotel guests. I don't think that's a good idea. I think the room is too beautiful, too enjoyable to be used as a hotel pool. What I would like to see them do is to restore the original second class pool. It used to exist on E-deck. It used to exist on E-deck of the aft end of the ship. It was accessible by elevators. The elevator shafts are still there, but what is there now is a lobby for the engineering part of the museum of the Queen Mary. So when you walk in, there's a giant lobby there, and then right where the pool, the second class pool used to be, is a massive 4D theater. Now the 4D theater is just an auditorium. It could be easily removed. I mean, I say easily, but it'll be expensive. But it is just an auditorium, and it could be removed. And there is a way to rebuild somewhat a second class pool. And then that pool could be used for hotel guests, because it would be private, it would be away from everything. But imagine if you rebuilt the first class pool. You're going to have people who are visiting just for the day, who really want to see the pool room, and they're going to be crowding the pool room while people are trying to enjoy their swimming. It would just be awkward, you know? It's just the same thing of like when a hotel pool is like right in the view of everybody. It's just awkward. It's like, geez, I'm swimming in front of like, you know, tons of people. It's just awkward. So yeah, I don't know, you know. The other thing too is that the pool room, the first class pool room is so beautiful. I just wouldn't want people to be there all day and potentially vandalizing it, you know, because that can happen when people are allowed free roam of a place. They can vandalize it. So yeah, I mean, the second class pool room, if it's rebuilt from, you know, modern materials and stuff, its value, the individual value of the materials is not that high. So if something gets broken, it's replaced for a relatively cost-efficient price. But you break something in the original first-class pool room, and you're talking about replacing something that's historic. So yeah, I don't agree with making that into a pool room. But yeah, those are my ideas. King of Battleships. So ships can technically still have shear, but they are not built with shear anymore because of various reasons. One, they don't need to. They don't need shear anymore. Modern ships don't need them because they have stabilizers, they have bulbous bows, all that kind of stuff that prevents a ship from, you know, rolling too much in the sea. They're also built a certain way that prevents them from requiring, what do you call it? Shear. So, and shear can complicate things when it comes to ADA compliance. At least that's it in America, but there are disability, what do you call it? Disability codes that allow for people with disabilities to get around a ship, and shear makes that more difficult, you know. It's a long story. Sunset Meadows says, have you ever been to Belfast? If not, would you want to go see the Titanic Museum and Nomadic? So, a lot of people on my channel know that I am eventually planning to take a transatlantic voyage to the UK aboard the Queen Mary 2 and then stay in the UK/Europe for about 2 weeks or so, visiting various locations. One of those locations I've been touting for a long time was going to be Belfast. You know, we were going to take a plane flight from London to Belfast, stay in Belfast overnight, experience the Titanic Museum, experience Nomadic, experience a bunch of other stuff. But my friend recently went to Belfast with his family. He experienced all that. And I felt that since he's already done it now, it's no point in me and him going back to Belfast. Particularly because he went there and he enjoyed it. But he told me it may not be worth all the money of taking a plane flight over there, staying overnight, and spending 2 days in Belfast. He just said, it might not be worth that. So I had to rethink it. I told him immediately, I said, okay, well, if we're not going to Belfast, I said, the other place I really want to go is Edinburgh, Scotland. I really, really want to go to Edinburgh, but it wasn't even considerable on our list because of Belfast. We were, like I said, we were planning to go to Belfast. That was going to take 2 days. So now that we're not planning to go to Belfast anymore, I want to go to Edinburgh because I want to see the Royal Yacht Britannia, and I want to see a few other historic places in the city, particularly just the ancient stuff, some of the older stuff, the pubs, all the various stuff. So I want to go to Edinburgh now. So yeah, I don't think I will be going to Belfast to see the Nomadic, to see the Titanic Museum. Yeah. So. And I know some of you are probably going to be like, well, Alex, you have to because it's Titanic and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not really that much of a Titanic fan. I like the Titanic, but I don't love the Titanic. On my list of favorite ships, Titanic is like number 12 on my list of favorite ships. Number 12. So I'm actually not like aching to go to Belfast. It would be a cool place to go if I had time and money to go there. But, I was not looking forward to taking a plane flight from London to Belfast. I was not looking forward to that. And since my friend went and he told me all about it and he showed me all these pictures and video he took, I was like, okay, I'm satisfied with what you've shown me. I want to go to Edinburgh. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Geshmak is asking about the Russian submarine next to the Queen Mary. So let me drink this real quick because I want to refill my cup. So, the Russian submarine. It has been abandoned since the year 2015. There is a huge legal issue happening right now where the previous owners of the submarine, or supposed owners of the submarine, claim that they were not the previous owners of the submarine, that it belongs to the previous owners. Long story short, the only person that could technically claim ownership of the submarine is now elderly and in a nursing home. They do not have a company anymore. They do not run their businesses anymore. They are in no fit state to take back the submarine. So, and this was an owner that dates back like a decade or two, so we're talking a long time ago. So, he's not going to take back the submarine. And even then, no one is really sure that the submarine still belongs to him because its ownership is claimed to have passed on to several different people since then. And none of those people right now either still have a company, so like Urban Commons was one of the people that is allegedly one of the previous owners of the submarine. They're no longer a business. They went bankrupt and everything, their heads of the company went to prison, all that kind of stuff. So they're not around to claim ownership of it or pay any money. I mean, Long Beach recently backed out of a lawsuit that they were part of a lawsuit against Urban Commons for money that they gave towards the Queen Mary that is unaccounted for because Urban Commons, they weren't sure that Urban Commons spent the money correctly. They had to back out of that lawsuit because Urban Commons does not have enough money to pay them back if the judge rules in their favor. There's no money. So the thing is that, long story short, there is no one to claim ownership of the submarine, and there is no one who can be held financially responsible for it? No one has the money. So, you know, you can sue someone all you want, but that doesn't make them automatically have more money. You know, so the thing is that the submarine is still tied up in legal issues, so the city can't do anything about it right now. But they do hope that once that is all settled, that they can remove the submarine, because the submarine is not reusable. It is in such bad shape. I mean, just to make it safe again for people to walk around inside would require kind of like rebuilding it from the ground up. But even then, removing it from the water, the engineers that examined it said that they worry that just pulling it out of the water would cause it to break apart and collapse. It is that bad because there is a leak on the inside. The exterior hull of the submarine has been, you know, has numerous holes in it from just being rotten. And then there is a partial leak in the interior hull, which is in the stern area of the submarine. So there is water inside the capsule of the submarine. So it's just in really, really bad shape. It's also overrun by lots of animals. It's overrun by raccoons, by rats, by birds. You know, it's completely ruined. There's nothing salvageable about it. And it would cost an estimated $5 million to do anything with it. Either to float it out, if it still floats. They're not even sure it will still float. If they pull it out of the lagoon, because they can remove the rock wall around the Queen Mary. They can remove a piece of the rock wall to tow it out, because that's how they installed the submarine. They removed a part of the rock wall and pushed the submarine in. So even if they did that and they were towing the submarine around the harbor, there's no telling if the submarine would survive that kind of movement. It could suddenly sink into the harbor. So, and that would be really bad for the environment. So, you know, and then trying to pull it out of the water, it could break apart while the cranes are holding it. Now, as you know, cranes have to be counterweighted against the load that they're bearing. So if they're going to pull 5 pounds from over here, then the back of the crane must be loaded up with somewhat of an equal amount of weight, or at least distributed a certain way. If the submarine is lifted, we're talking, you know, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pounds, and it breaks apart and falls into the water, the counterweight action of the cranes could cause them to flip over as well. So it's dangerous. So right now they're really not sure how they're going to go about it. All they know is they have to remove the submarine. It has to be destroyed and removed from the lagoon, because if it sinks, it could tumble underneath the bow of the Queen Mary, and when the Queen Mary comes down during low tide, her bow could crush it, and that could damage the bow of the Queen Mary. So it is a very complex issue right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved anytime soon, unfortunately. All right, more tea. All right, so for those that are still asking, today's choice of tea was Earl Grey, which is my favorite tea. Just reading people's comments. I can't read them all out loud, or else it would take forever, but I am reading through them to see which ones I could respond to out loud. So Ken was talking about, like, what if they did something to the at least one of the boiler room spaces down below to make it more interesting, to bring in more people. He was saying something like laser tag or bumper boats or something. So I had an idea for something that could go in one of the boiler rooms. Now, see, I wouldn't agree with laser tag or bumper boats, and the reason why is because I think that whatever goes into the Queen Mary should be something that is at least fits with the historic theme of the ship. Bumper boats is kind of like a amusement park ride. It just doesn't seem right. Laser tag is better. I mean, you could theme laser tag to look like the ship and stuff, but it's, you know, it's still like lasers and stuff, and I don't know. It just seems weird, you know, for the Queen, like the Queen Mary. You know, you think about the Queen Mary, you think of this elegant ship crossing the Atlantic, and the last thing that comes to mind is bumper boats or laser tag. But I had an idea for something that could go into one of the boiler rooms, and I haven't presented it to the manager of the Queen Mary because I'm waiting to see if he even responds to the free ideas that I gave him, the stuff that doesn't cost any money, let alone this one, which will cost money. But I think there should be escape rooms that could be installed in one of the boiler rooms. Now, some of you don't know what an escape room is. I barely know what they are, but I know what they are. An escape room is not necessarily scary. It could be just ordinary. But the idea is you get put into a room and you have to solve kind of like a little mystery, right? Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's not. Let's just go with the not scary one. So you go and you get put into a room. It looks like a furnished room, or it could be like, it could look like a boiler room, right? You know, you get put into a room and there's no way out. You have to solve the mystery to find the way out. And sometimes that involves finding a key, sometimes that involves finding another object, or sometimes that just involves literally finding a door. It could be any number of things. But you work with the people that you're with. Usually it's your friends or your family that's with you, and you're alone in a room. and yeah, you solve the mystery, and then you find the way out. And sometimes that leads to another room, or leads to another, or sometimes it's just one room because it takes a long time to find it, that kind of thing. So escape rooms are becoming really, really popular because it's a great way to tell a story that you're involved with. In my letter to the general manager, I was telling him about how modern tourist attractions, hotels even, the tourism industry is shifting towards an industry where the people, the tourists, want to be involved with the attraction they are visiting. Now, the Queen Mary right now doesn't fit doesn't fit that mold right now because everything that people can see or do is behind a barrier. There isn't much that they can interact with on the Queen Mary. They just can only stand around and look at stuff, right? I told him, I said, there needs to be ways to do things that are non-invasive to the ship's history. So we don't want people climbing on stuff and breaking things. But there are ways of doing stuff that make things more interactive. And so I gave him some free ideas on how to make things interactive. But an escape room is a great way to do something that can earn you extra money for the ship, because they could charge separately for the escape rooms, but they're really, really trending and popular right now. And what else was I going to say about it? It can be themed to, you know, you could do various themes even, because a boiler room is huge. You can fit multiple escape rooms inside one boiler room, let alone two boiler rooms. But you could have one themed to machinery, so you're in a replica of like a machinery space on the Queen Mary, or another one could be replicas of passenger spaces, or another one could be replicas of I don't know, crew spaces or something, you know. So there's various ones. There could even be a scary Halloween themed one, you know. So, but they're really popular right now, and people would pay money to do escape rooms, especially locals, locals to Long Beach. You know, they would love to do that. You know, so, and there's actually currently right now an easy way for people to get into the boiler rooms. There's actually a gangway. There's a gangway on the wharf that leads into the Queen Mary that goes directly into the old boiler room spaces. So it's not like they have to climb any crazy stairs or anything to get down there. It's easy. It's easy. So, yeah, I think, yeah, I would present that idea to the general manager, but first I want to see if he even likes the free ideas I gave him. So, Zorro, thank you so much. Kevin Stewart says, when you visit Edinburgh, are you going to see Loch Ness? I don't know if I will. First of all, I don't even know how far away it is from Edinburgh. I don't want to do anything that will take several hours to get to, because my friend, he's basically humoring me on all this historic stuff. He's there to see certain things, but he doesn't want to travel hours and hours and hours just to see one thing and then have to travel back. So if Loch Ness is too far away, he might not want to see it. So, King of Battleships says, Alex, do you think Normandy could have recaptured the Blue Riband from Queen Mary after the war? No. So Normandy captured the Blue Riband away from Queen Mary the first time, and that was because she was a fast ship, and Queen Mary was having issues with vibration at the time. So Normandy was able to do that. When Queen Mary started resolving some of those vibration issues, which meant getting brand new propellers, she recaptured the Blue Riband from Normandy. Then Normandy got brand new propellers that were more hydrodynamic. And, no, yeah, that was it. She got more hydrodynamic propellers, which allowed her to capture the Blue Riband again. But what finally made the Queen Mary capture the Blue Riband from Normandy last time is her horsepower. Normandy's absolute maximum horsepower is around, I mean, I think this is overly generous, but 200,000 horsepower. That's overly generous in my opinion. They say that Normandy's horsepower output was 165,000. I imagine that her maximum output would be 195,000. So I don't think 200,000 was her maximum. But Queen Mary's maximum horsepower output ever recorded was 212,000 shaft horsepower. So I think Queen Mary could have done it. The other thing too is that what my friend Steve might also tell everybody too is that Normandy was a steam electric propulsion system. So basically, steam went into turbo generators. The turbo generators generated the electricity, which powered the electric propeller engine. So I don't know what to call them, but they're the electric engines that turned the propellers. Those electric engines were constructed with a maximum power output. There was a certain amount that they could not surpass, and that was 195,000 shaft horsepower. Some people say 200,000. I won't contest that if they say that. But let's just say, even if it was 200,000 shaft horsepower, that was the maximum that the electric engines could possibly put out. They were limited because they were electric. Queen Mary, however, was entirely steam-driven. So that means that the steam went directly into her turbine engines, which were directly, well, with a gear connected to the propeller shafts. So whatever amount of steam you put into those engines will result in faster propeller spinning and more horsepower. And the thing is that the Queen Mary, multiple times in her history, has built up steam pressure faster. Built up steam pressure that exceeded expectations. There was even stories in World War II where the captain, when noticing that they were sailing through a particular patch of water that was infested with enemy submarines, he would order the crew to build steam pressure past the Queen Mary's safety limit in order to do a brief sprint across the water over 5 knots faster than her fastest achievable speed. Queen Mary's officially recorded maximum speed was 32.84 knots, right? But during World War II, there was records of the Queen Mary doing brief sprints across the water. I say brief, it's not a whole way across the Atlantic. It's a brief sprint across the water at 38 knots, which is incredible. Those are like SS United States kind of speeds. So if Normandy was in that same situation in World War II, let's say Normandy was serving during World War II as a troop ship, and they crossed through that same patch of water, it didn't matter if the captain ordered the Normandy to build steam past their safety limit, because the electric engines that propelled the propellers were limited as to how much horsepower they could put out. So, yeah, that is why I think the Queen Mary would have still won the Blue Riband, because even with her steam pressure safety limits in place, there were still ways that they could still push all that steam into the engines to get a little bit more horsepower out of her. Like I said, her maximum ever recorded power output was 212,000 shaft horsepower. That's significantly more than SS Normandy. So, yeah. Yep. Justin says the submarine next to Queen Mary, the Russian sub, could be hauled out and put on land as an attraction, even down the road. Well, like I said, the engineers who examined it said it was so deteriorated that even if it was hauled out and put on land, it would probably collapse into itself. It is that deteriorated. It is just not in good shape. It is not safe for people to even go inside. They believe wholeheartedly, the engineers believe wholeheartedly that it is not salvageable. So, yeah, it is, yeah, I do not think it could even be used on land as an attraction, because it is not salvageable. So, so do you have any ideas how it will be removed? Chilling and Frozen North says, Alex, speaking of the sub, do you have any ideas how it will be removed? Only what the city has thought of. They've thought of towing it out, they've thought of lifting it out. But either way they do it, they are afraid it will break apart. So, no, I don't have any idea how they're going to do it, because even they don't have any idea how they're going to do it. It's just definitely a very, very difficult situation. Justin says, are you going to show the videos and pictures your friend took in Belfast on your channel? I don't know. Because he's not exactly open to that idea quite yet. I'm not even... when he went to the Nomadic, for instance, because I told him, I said, if you've got enough video of Nomadic, I would like to make my own video out of your footage. The thing was that he went to Nomadic, and a lot of it was closed. A lot of the Nomadic was closed, so he couldn't go up anywhere. He could only see this one area of the Nomadic. And I thought, that's not enough footage. I can't make a video about Nomadic if I can't see all of it. So, I don't think so. King of Battleship says, what is the status of the Yarrow project? It is currently on hold while the top members of the Yarrow project establish some methods of getting the project going. So, you hear that, Steve? You hear that, Rob? Get to it! Historic Ship says, can people go up to the Queen Mary's crow's nest? Or like staff? Nobody can go up to the crow's nest. First of all, the crow's nest, the floor of the crow's nest is very rotten. You can't stand on it, or else you'd probably fall through. But the other thing too is that no one can go inside the mast. It's just off limits. I'm not gonna say it's permanently blocked off, because it's not. The door can be opened by the right staff members who have the key and all that, but it is not permitted for anyone to go up there. Yeah, Steve says, I do not think the city will want to... Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I do not think the city will want to absorb the cost of removing the rock jetty to remove the submarine. I think the sub will be removed by crane. Yeah, that's probably the most likely way it's going to be removed from the what do you call it? The lagoon, is by lifting it out. So Geshmank says, you have excellent ideas, Alex. I hope the general manager takes advantage of your suggestions because you understand the ship and have superb business insights. Thank you so much. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Sometimes I feel like I'm that crazy guy who has all these wacky ideas that no one thinks are good. So hearing that makes me feel really good, because I don't think my ideas are really out there, you know? Like, when I sent that email to him, I was kind of worried. I was like, what is he going to think of this? You know, but they're not crazy ideas. You know, I think they're very, like, well thought out ideas, because I have been thinking about them for 2 years now, those ideas. Alto says, we do a yearly escape room activity with my coworkers. Last year was Jurassic Park theme. I did one in Folsom that was in an old dive bar, and it was themed that way, and used the old bar as part of it. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think Queen Mary could definitely benefit from having escape rooms. Ooh, Kevin Stewart says, it's a 3.5 hour drive to Loch Ness from Edinburgh. Wow. Yeah, that might be too much. Georgina says the Commodore... Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I lost it. Where'd it go? The Commodore on the ship was very interesting, wandering around the ship and restaurant, greeting guests. Can you tell us more about him? Yes, his name is Everett Horde. He has been an employee on the Queen Mary since the 1980s. He's one of the longest serving staff members of the Queen Mary. And over the years, he has gained such a knowledge and expertise of the ship that that previous management have made him kind of an ambassador of the ship, and his ambassadorial obligations have continued even to this day. So the new management on the ship still retain him as the Commodore. He is the ambassador of the Queen Mary, and you know, and honestly, Everett Horde, he's such a nice guy, and he has all these amazing insights about the ship and about the Queen Mary, and you know, all that stuff, like, you know, so yeah, he's definitely a very good ambassador of the Queen Mary. Steve says, Queen Mary had an overload combined shaft horsepower of 248,000. That is incredible. Now, I trust what Steve says. Steve is a lot more knowledgeable about the Queen Mary than I am. I'm still learning. I'm still stealing his knowledge from his brain. But yeah, if Steve says the ship had an overload horsepower of 248,000, I'm inclined to believe that. I mean, the stories that he's told me of, when the ship would go at, an overload, what do you call it? Would push the steam past the safety limit during World War II, and the oil tanks on the ship just draining in front of everybody's eyes, as the ship guzzled oil to go that speed. I mean, it's just incredible. Historic Ships says, how come the Turbinia never got the blue riband when it was 35 knots? Because the blue riband is a run between the light ship just off of... Oh god, I don't remember what light ship it is. It's the light ship just off of the southern point of England, so like Portsmouth, near that area. And then you have to go across the Atlantic all the way to New York to the other light ship on the other... So yeah, it's 3,000 some odd miles. So just because you go 35 knots does not mean you've captured the ribbon. You have to go from England to New York, or from New York to England to capture the riband. The other thing too is that you have to be an ocean liner. The Turbinia was not an ocean liner. She was just a little steamship. She was not designed to carry, paying passengers or cargo or anything like that. She was just a little experimental ship. So in order to win the blue riband, you must be an ocean liner. You can't be a freight ship. You can't be whatever. You have to be an ocean liner. That was the rules. So yeah. And the funny thing too is, you don't have. Okay, so the SS United States captured the blue riband, going an average of 34 knots, right? But you don't have to. So like sometimes okay, let me put it this way. If you built a ship that was designed to go 45 knots, right, which is faster, like a knot faster than the fastest the SS United States was said to be able to go. If you built an ocean liner that was designed to go 45 knots, that doesn't automatically mean you can capture the blue riband. You see, you have to be able to travel faster than the average speed. So the average speed that was captured, that the SS United States captured, was at 34 point something knots, right? That was the average speed. If your super fast ship was only pulling an average of 33 knots, then most likely you would not have reached New York within a certain period of time. And that certain period of time is the previous record. So, I don't want to get too far into it, but just because you have a faster ship doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to capture the blue riband. I mean, look at SS Normandy. They thought they had the fastest ship ever, and true, she did capture the riband away from Queen Mary a few times, but ultimately the Queen Mary was the one that was capable of going faster. So it's complicated. That's why the blue riband run is from one light ship to the other. You have to get that run. It's a race. Chilling in Frozen North says, what is the Yarrow project? So, don't worry, Steve, I'm not going to reveal too much. I'll just reveal what people already know. The Yarrow project... See, the boilers on the Queen Mary were called Yarrow boilers. She had 24 Yarrow boilers and 3 Scotch boilers. But the Yarrow boilers on the Queen Mary were very specific types of boilers that were what are called water tube boilers. So the water went through the tubes, and a fire that was outside the tubes heated up the tubes to create steam. It's just an oversimplified way of putting it. As you know, the boilers and a lot of the turbo generators and everything from the Queen Mary were removed to make way for a museum that never actually ended up needing all that space. The Yarrow project was an idea created by Steve, who's in the chat, and his friend Rob Jacobs, and a few other team members who were on there. They all came up with this idea of restoring some of the boilers on the Queen Mary. Maybe not exactly replicas, maybe not literally made out of, steel and everything and capable of pressurizing, but at least some kind of visual replica that you could see and walk around and understand it. That is the extent of what I can tell you. And the Yarrow project was announced a long time ago, but due to changes in management on the Queen Mary over the decades, because it's been a couple decades, due to changes in management, it was they were not able to go through with the project, because each time management changed, it was a whole new deal. It's like they had to start over from scratch, because you pitch it to one management team, and then all of a sudden a new company comes in and takes charge of the Queen Mary. You got to pitch it to them, and so the management was changing hands so frequently over the last 20 years that they just waited to see if it would ever stabilize before they pitched it to the next management team. So right now, Steve and Rob Jacobs are deciding what the next step is. I do have a teaser trailer for a video about the Yarrow project. The video is not completed yet. I'm still waiting for Steve and Rob to give me the go-ahead to complete the video, but I do have the teaser trailer on my channel right now available to view. And yeah, it's really neat. I think you guys would like it. It's just a few seconds long, but yeah, so you can watch that teaser trailer and it would give you somewhat of an idea of what the Yarrow project is, because after the trailer comes a bit of an explanation. So yeah, and that is called the Queen Mary Story teaser trailer. So you can look it up on my channel. It's called the Queen Mary Story. Yeah. Ozzy upgraded to Senior Archivist. Thank you so much. How is the weather, Alex? Weather is wonderful. It has been cloudy all day. I love it that way. It is a nice, perfect temperature. I'm not hot at all. I love it. Today is a wonderful day. I love it. And the problem I have with the Russian submarine in front of the Queen Mary is every time I try to take pictures or video of the bow of the Queen Mary, that ugly submarine was always in the way. I could not get rid of it. Man. So I would love for them to remove that submarine so I can get nice, beautiful pictures of the Queen Mary again. I would love that. Moonzer says there is an abandoned room on the B deck on Queen Mary that I think can be used as an escape room. Yeah, but the thing is, if it's just one room, it doesn't really make sense. There should be an area where there's multiple rooms next to each other that are interconnected. That's the idea of escape room, because you escape to go into another room. So you need multiple rooms that are connected to each other. And I wouldn't want to take away space from a potential hotel room, because eventually if the ship is really popular, They might want to start, because there are a few abandoned staterooms on the Queen Mary that have not been converted to hotel rooms yet because they don't need them at the moment. So eventually, if the ship becomes super popular, they may want to invest in revamping those rooms into hotel rooms, and therefore I wouldn't want to take away space from the hotel areas of the ship. Okay, so Jeffrey says, are you going to watch the new Frasier series? I have been watching. I watched it last Thursday, and then I watched the episode that came out yesterday. And it's still a brand new show, so the characters still haven't gotten into the groove of what their character is yet, but I think it is okay. I don't think it's, like, amazing. It's not like the original Frasier show at the moment, but I can see the potential in it. I can see the potential in Season 2 being even better. So, you know, they're going to introduce these new characters. They're going to, you know, show how wacky and crazy they are. I see a good potential in the show. And I do enjoy it. I watched the yesterday's episode twice, you know, so yeah, I do enjoy it. History with Kobe says, do you think you could make a documentary on the passenger's life on the Queen Mary? For example, accommodation, cuisine, and activities, as well as some stuff on what the staff did for the passengers. Yes, I do actually have a plan to do that eventually, but I need more information, and that takes time. Let's see. Hello, Jessica. Historic Ships says, hey Alex, are the bottom of most cargo hatches black on most 20th century ocean liners? And why are they black? I've never heard of that. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, I've never heard of that before. Nathan says, thank you, Alex, for your response regarding the second-class library. I agree that restoring the room to its original purpose wouldn't yield much interest. Well, I didn't mean to say it that way. I do think it would be interesting. I think people would love to walk by and look at the room as it looked and maybe read a little plaque or something. But I don't think it would be useful for it to still be used by hotel guests as a library, because I don't think people would like to pull books off the shelves and open them and read them. You know, people have much more things that they'd rather do on the ship than read a book. They could read a book anywhere. They could go home and read a book. They could go to their local library and read a book. Why spend all this money to go on the Queen Mary just to read a book? So, but I do think it is important to restore the second-class library so that people can see it and can see what it looked like and how the second-class passengers might have enjoyed, you know, their time aboard the Queen Mary. So, yeah, I do think it is important to restore that. In fact, you know, if Steve Kaloka emailed me back and said, what's one area on the ship that you think could quickly be restored and should be, I'd immediately say, before anything else, the second-class library, because it is the least expensive area on the ship that can be restored. The next place after the second-class library, I would say, is the synagogue. I really think the synagogue on the Queen Mary should be restored, but that will take more money, because from what I understand, a lot of it has been removed from the room, so it would take money to put all that back in. So, but otherwise, yeah, the synagogue is another place. But yeah, I do think it is important. Let's see. King of Battleship says, Alex, I have heard of shear, but what is the camber? And why don't ships use them anymore? And why would it need fixing on the Queen Mary? That's a lot of questions. It would probably take me like an hour to explain it all. I'm just going to say that shear is the longitudinal curve on a ship, right? From bow to stern, it's the longitudinal upwards curve at the ends. Camber, when looking straight down at a ship, is the upwards curve towards the middle of the ship, towards the center line. That upwards curve helps add rigidity to the ship, but also, in case there is, for some reason, water intrusion on the upper decks, the water will roll off towards the ends of the sides of the ship and into the scuppers and drained off of the ship. You know, you see that a lot in riverboats. Yeah. So yeah, that is the point of shear and camber. It's a very complex shape. Yeah, so it's yeah. As for why they don't use it anymore, like I said, they've just discovered engineering ways that they don't need it. Engineers have come a long way since the days of building Queen Mary, that they know how to build a ship without the need for shear and camber. It's not necessary anymore. So, yeah. As for why it would need to be fixed on the Queen Mary, that would take a very long time to explain. Essentially, when you look at the Queen Mary, if you walk down one of the corridors, there's a saying that every doorway on the corridor is unique. None are the same. You can't take a door off of one part of the ship and install it on a door on the other part because it won't fit in the doorway correctly. That is true because of the way that the ship is curved and all the doors having to sit vertically. They are all a different shape because of that curve. It's not linear, it's a curve. So you literally cannot move one door from one area and just quickly install it on another door and it would work properly. It's just the shear of the ship makes it too complex. That is a bad thing in today's modern shipping world, because if you need to replace a door, it would be easier just to pull it from stock and install it. But in the old days, if the Queen Mary, while out on the ocean, had an issue where a door was busted in, they would have to go to the ship's carpenter and have them cut out a door to match that original shape, which is harder to do than it sounds. So that is just one of many, 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 many reasons why shear and camber are no longer done on ships anymore. It just is too complex to maintain a ship with shear and camber. But there's also many, many other reasons. So I don't want to like pigeonhole it into like one little reason. There's a lot of reasons why ships don't have shear and camber anymore. But yeah. My friend recently visited the Hikawa Maru, which is a Japanese ocean liner. It sits in Kyoto, I think. He recently visited the Hikawa Maru, and he showed me video of him walking around the ship. And one thing that was very prevalent was the camber on the ship. I mean, the shear was what you would expect, but the camber was really pronounced. I told him, I said, that is a really pronounced camber for a ship of this size. I mean, it was like, you could see the slant on the doors and stuff. I was just like, wow. But I felt like I had to say that, because I've never seen a ship of that size with such pronounced camber. It was crazy. Well, Historic Ships says, I think if the city of Long Beach would scrap the sub, should they remove some of the breakwater around the Queen Mary and then lift it out? But you see, why remove the breakwater if you're just going to lift the submarine out? It doesn't make sense. Like, why why do that? You might as well just do one or the other to save money, you know? Stephen Hemingway, you are very, very welcome. Yes, Justin says it was the Ambrose lightship to the Nantucket lightship. That is correct, yes. It is the Ambrose lightship to the Nantucket lightship, or vice versa. That is how you capture the Riband, is going between those two ships. Goofy Rolls says, hey Alex, is it even possible to remove the Russian sub with the Queen Mary in the way? Yes, technically. If the submarine did not break apart upon lifting it, it could just be lifted right out of the water and placed on the land for them to scrap it and take it apart, you know. So technically, yes, it could be lifted right out of there. Or if they remove part of the rock wall and then towed it out, that's also possible. So yeah, it wouldn't be a problem for the Queen Mary to be right there. The only concern that they have is that if it breaks apart, it could tumble underneath the Queen Mary. So that is the only concern there. History with Kobe says, Alex, do you think the library could be converted into a bookshop that has educational books about the Queen Mary's history that people could buy instead of just read? Technically, yes, but they wouldn't need to, because the first-class library on Promenade Deck already sells books about the Queen Mary's history. So they wouldn't need a second one. But yeah, the first-class library on Promenade Deck, which you can enter from the main hall or you can enter from the promenade, they sell all kinds of gifts and things that you could buy, but among it is books about the Queen Mary's history. In fact, one of the books that they sell in the first class library right now is this book, The Queen Mary Manual by Gary Chambers. So yeah, this one is what you can buy inside of the first class library on Queen Mary, although I got this one as a gift from Gary Chambers. Oh, Mike says, stayed at the Queen Mary 2 weeks ago, room B413, really comfortable king-size bed, and best New England clam chowder I've had in years, possibly ever. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's a big compliment. Ron says, do you know if the first-class dining saloon is open to view while visiting, and since the first-class pool is across the way from it? And what else on our deck is open to view? So the first-class dining saloon on Queen Mary on our deck, for those who don't know what deck it is, sometimes it is open. Sometimes they have the doors wide open. You can just walk on in if you want. My friend, the last couple of times my friend Chris has visited to film footage for me, the doors have been wide open on the dining saloon. So you can just often walk right on in and take pictures and video. My rule about it is, if the doors are open to a public space, like the first class smoking room, first class main lounge, first class dining saloon, anything like that, if there's a public space and the doors are open or unlocked and you don't see anybody in there, just walk in and take a look. The worst that can happen is somebody comes by and says, oh, you're not allowed to be in here. Then all you do is you go, oh, I'm so sorry, and then you walk back out again. Honestly, I mean, I don't condone anybody breaking into off-limits areas. If there's something that says employees only, never go through there. But if it's a public space that is sometimes open to view, and you're not sure if it's open or not, but you can walk inside, just go in. Just go in, take a look. And the worst that can happen is somebody goes, oh, I'm sorry, this room is not open right now. And then they just turn you back, That's the worst that can happen. So feel free to do it. They're often very lenient about stuff like that. You know, my friend on his last visit to the Queen Mary, he walked right into the first class dining saloon because the doors were wide open, and a bunch of other people were randomly walking in there to get a look. You know, kids were running around. Eventually, maybe 10 minutes later, literally 10 minutes later, an employee came out and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, everybody, but we're going to be closing up this room, so, you know, we need you to step out," you know. And so, yeah, they already took their time, but they eventually left the room. So, yeah, I would just say that sometimes it's open. If you can open the door and there's nobody inside, just walk in. Just go for it. And if they tell you to leave, that's the worst that can happen. They're not going to kick you off the ship just because, you know, you walked into a room that you didn't know whether or not was supposed to be closed, you know. So, yeah. And then the pool is right across the way. They have all the lights on in the pool room. They never used to. Even in early 2020 when I last visited, all the lights were turned off in the pool room. But they're all on right now, so you get a slightly better view through the window than you would normally view. Anything else on our deck that you can do? No, because actually, yes. If you go down the third class stairway, which is the forwardmost staircase that you can go on the ship, you can access that stairway from main deck, A deck, B deck. Those are the 3 decks that you can access that stairway. And you just go down, it takes you down to our deck. And there's a little landing there. It's just a tiny space. But in that landing is a giant safe that was used in the movie Assault on a Queen. So that was the movie Assault on a Queen, and that safe is from that movie. And then you might even be able to see through the windows. There's a bunch of windows there that look into what used to be part of the third class dining room. Right now it is used, sadly, as a seance circle, so it will be probably decorated to look like a seance room, but just know in your head that some of that room, like the pillars and the wood paneled walls, were part of just a small part of the original third class dining room. So yeah, that part of our deck is also available, but everything else on our deck is not available. It is not accessible. But yes. All right. Oh, hey, Rena, how's it going? So, yeah, 3:06. I started at 1. Oh, wow, it's been 2 hours already. Alright. Well, I should probably end this live stream soon. But Pete and Harley says, does the Queen Mary have volunteers working on / and or interpreting parts of the ship? The museum ship nearest me has great core of retired volunteers who really enrich the experience for visitors. No, the Queen Mary does not have any volunteer anything. I don't know why. I mean, I think some people have said that the companies that operate the ship consider them to be like an insurance issue. I don't know, but for some strange reason that I cannot explain, there are no methods available for volunteering to be on the Queen Mary or anything like that. They operate it very much like a private business. So it's unfortunate because they really could use some volunteer assistance, at least with some of the remedial tasks, if not, some of the major refurbishments. But I don't know. They just choose not to, I guess. But if they did volunteer programs, I would do it. I would spend the money to go down to Southern California and volunteer, if only for a day, to do something on the Queen Mary. Be a docent, you know, sand and refinish a handrail. I don't care. I would do it. I would do it. You know, but I don't know. They just don't have that for some reason. Steve says, by the way, everyone, Saturday, October 28th at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. Pacific time on the Blue Riband channel. Sorry, I was like, what is BRC? On the Blue Riband channel, Alex, which is me, will be joining me and a few others for a live stream special, The Ghosts, Myths, and Spooky History of the Queen Mary. Yes, folks, I will be co-host on that live stream, and again, that happens October 28th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. Gishmake says, you mentioned the synagogue earlier. Is the room actually in good enough shape to be made back into a synagogue? I actually don't know. I've never seen what it looks like currently. Maybe Steve has. Steve, have you seen what the synagogue currently looks like right now? Because I actually don't know what condition it's in. What I do know is that most of the artifacts that were in the synagogue still exist, and they can be put back in. But as for the wood-paneled walls and everything, I have no idea. No idea. Ron says, thanks, Alex. I will try to get down to the first-class dining saloon. I don't think I've ever seen it in person. Oh, it's worth it. Yeah. If you ever go there, it's worth it. What's really cool is if they have the doors to the Windsor room open as well. The Windsor room originally was part of the first-class dining room. So if they have the doors to the Windsor room fully open, you can see what both spaces look like together, how it originally should be, and it's massive. There is a reason why that space is the largest dining space on any ocean liner. Not cruise ship, but ocean liner. Definitely larger than the dining room of SS Normandy, for sure. So Steve says the synagogue is sadly stripped out. There's nothing in there. So, yeah, it would probably... The artifacts still exist, but the wood-paneled walls and everything, the light fixtures, all that would have to be replicated, which will cost a lot of money, but then again, it's not the most expensive project to be done aboard the ship. I think for about $10,000, the room could be refurbished. $10,000 is a lot of money, but not compared to the millions that will cost to redo the promenade side shell, for instance. But yeah. Alright, folks, I'm going to get going. Looks like we're having a lull in viewership anyway. But yeah, it has been wonderful talking to you guys. I am currently working on the next video. I've just been so swamped with things to do. But yeah, so I'm going to do like one Queen Mary video and then one completely unrelated video themed to Halloween. If you like Halloween-themed videos, I have them on my channel. If you go straight to the front page of my channel, you will see immediately on the top is a list of videos that are kind of Halloween-themed. The one I suggest is the one about the Ursuline Convent in New Orleans. It's not only about spooky stuff, but it's about the history of the convent and how it was built and stuff. It's really good. I think you guys would like it. So yeah, be sure to check that out. So anyway, folks, thank you so much, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.